And there should be going. Just check it. Is it running? Can you see that?
It's running.
Just check that each time. Okay. Very good. All right. This is political sociology. I'm Terry Clark. Welcome. This has been a congested time for lots of things. Is anyone who is not registered here now? Okay. I'm sorry, but we're not allowed to have you in the room. So if you're not here, we can wait, and there may be some space, but probably the class has been closed for some time. So we apologize. We'll give it again probably in the future, and there are other courses, but we can't have 6 more people that are whatever. Yeah, question?
Is it possible to get on a wait list?
Yep. No, you probably are. If you've requested a consent, you were on the wait list. But there are 15. I think it's 15 or so people waiting now. So we have your times, and basically we've admitted people first who request first. Roughly, it's seniority in terms of chronological. Question?
Did I say if my consent has been approved, but I'm still debating if I should claim it or not?
Half the time. Well, the main point for everyone and for the past, all the classes are being recorded on YouTube, and you can take another course and you can watch the YouTubes starting with it, even if you're not registered. You're welcome to, and you can tell your friends in China. I have many people I'm working with in China who are doing this right now. So we had 1.4 million in China. So used to big numbers. So.
Would you mind forwarding the syllabus? Is there any chance you might mind forwarding the syllabus to those of us that aren't going to be able to do it?
Yeah. What if we? What's the easiest way to do that for the syllabus?
I can send you an email.
Okay, sure. No, send it to me and to. Well, yeah, you don't have the TA as well. So just send it to me then. That's fine. And they should be also. They also should be with the sociology department, I think.
Excellent.
Okay. Anything else from anyone on logistics? We have 3 books. They should be in. We're gonna just test it for a second. If it runs, then okay. That's great. Now just keep it like that. But let's see if we can turn off the. Well, actually, we'll start with that. That's fine. Then you don't have to turn it on. All right. Welcome to the class. Now you're going to see serious stuff. Okay. This is what this class is about. Bang.
Shall I play?
Please play. And nice and loud. Pretend we're in the crowd. Loud. Can you get louder? It's a 1-minute trailer. Why do we show this now? This is downtown Chicago. Major driver of why Chicago is different from Cleveland, Des Moines, small towns in the whole Midwest, places in other parts of the world. If we move to other names like Taylor Swift, Singapore this past year has engaged Taylor Swift to come to Singapore, not to any nearby countries, on condition that she only come to Singapore, because Singapore wants to say, we are part of, the city is an entertainment machine. The country is an entertainment machine. Politics is part of entertainment. Even in the country that had a election yesterday, the day before. Are elections entertainment? Maybe more than we think. Certainly Trump has thought in these terms, with a red hat, etc. Where and how these things connect and are interconnected is what this is a great university to explore, because we have been for years interdisciplinary. We have these workshops which can be very focused on one theme, but they can connect many divisions, many sections. And one of the most, well, the workshops began with the economists in the 1950s, 60s. Milton Friedman, George Stigler. They had a work, and it was called industrial organization. But it spread out, and then when Gary Becker came back here, it became all the social sciences. And you had people who were journalists, political scientists, sociologists, psychologists, anthropologists, history of art people. Full professors in economics are teaching the history of art today. Freakonomics, the professor is now a full professor here. What happened to Milton Friedman? Very, very different. It's still part of economics, but so is Freakonomics. And so where and how, if this is happening in the most theoretically strict, hierarchical, mathematized for the last half century, how has this changed in the rest of the social sciences? In some respects, more so. Tris Tropique, Claude Lévi-Strauss, published in the mid-50s, I think 1955, said basically, the jungles are gone. They're no longer the isolated tribe that they were assumed by Radcliffe Brown or so-called, or Malinowski, or many of the others which did the classics of anthropology. So Lévi-Strauss said, we need to do something else. We need to compare debates about music and lifestyle in Paris. Margaret Mead did a little bit of this. Mary Douglas did the same in England about food and Western food and international issues. Clifford Geertz in anthropology did more strict Parsonian sociology in the first half of his career. Second half, he's critiquing, and the anthropologists are now doing urban anthropology or urban whatever. Others have arguably studied assumptions and criticized, or following T.W. Adorno, critical theory, not sociology, critical, not even social science, critical theory is the term which he originated. And many people do that, and a few of them do. There's a workshop roughly doing that officially, and others more unofficially here. When I was choosing what to get a PhD in, I wasn't sure. I was interested in politics, political science maybe, but then I went to the meeting of the American Political Science Association, and the most smart people, and the people who were talking, and the people in the crowd were talking about Philip Converse, Edward Shills, Seymour Martin Lipset, who were all sociologists. I said, hey, sociology? So I looked into that and said, well, maybe this is not such a bad area to go. But then 10 years later, it was economics had come along, public choice, not critical theories. All these things are now going on within political science departments. But so are other people wherever else they may be based. And this is appropriate given the content includes what we saw in the film. And we will elaborate why and how this sounds perhaps a little while, but we'll see more as we proceed. Serious research takes years to do. How big is the impact, and where and how does it specifically fit with all the theories? But yeah, let me mention, several of you had masks even in the elevator. I generally try to bring a box if anybody wants to, if anybody wants a mask here. We got a few of these still. Even last quarter we required them. We're not requiring them now, but you're certainly welcome to we'll pass it around. If anybody wants a mask, help yourself. And we have the fans for the same reason. The simple past kinds of questions that used to be a lot of political sociology was, how much was your parents' occupation driving your voting? Do you vote as a Democrat because your father was a proletarian or a capitalist? That was a big part of the driver for lots of political sociology with Seymour Martin Lipset. It's probably the best label of one person who shaped the field, who defined the essence of what we're doing, Seymour Martin Lipset. And the first half of his career was summarized in his book, Political Ban. And as he said at the end, this is a secular Marxist book. Secular in the sense that it's not dogmatic, but Marxist in the loose sense of having class conflict as a driver of history, of having working class as a driver, and talking in class terms. Then, if you read his appendix about where this began to change, I knew him. I got to know him better. We had many discussions. We had things like the California Taxpayers Revolt, Proposition 13, where he was active there, and there was a transformation of many things, and so Lipset went through a number of transformations in his analytical perspective, and you can see this in his later books and things which are I'll bring some of this as well. I mean, one summary was this title: "The New Political Culture was not just the left and the right of the traditional class politics." There's another book called The Breakdown of Class Politics that Lipset and I edited together. We did a paper called Are Social Classes Dying? And that led immediately to people at Berkeley and Oxford attacking us. That led to 10 years roughly of debates, and those are published as the book called The Breakdown of Class Politics. And the title is strong, but the point is not that there is no more class. Class is always there. There always will be, you'll always have parents, you'll have parents' potential impact. But how much and where and why, or how much do people revolt against their parents and their politics instead of in favoring them? Or if you have John Dewey as an earlier faculty member here, and continuing in the workshop of Nobel Prize winner contemporary James Heckman in economics, is now giving a workshop with the chairman of former political science on how child rearing affects their worldviews. It's the same theme. And Heckman has gone to China and has helped to set up courses, and Dewey himself went to China. I think he gave 200 lectures in China because he could see things might change. And the point is, these are now, and this was the foundation of the Harris School of Public Policy. Harris did a book on child rearing and how can you solve the problems of black crime, and his answer was better child rearing, to simplify. not only, but to say where and how. If you say change it, well, how? Okay, these issues are hot issues today. Um, the issues are not simply a question of ideology or personal style. That is, people who may find this happening and may say this is terrible, or they say this is wonderful, it's in the right direction, but more. And so where and how the ideology or the perspective of looking at this feeds into political theory and other kinds of issues. But this was part of the science or social science and thought not to be unrealistic, but to be constructed in ways that others could check what they did, so your data look at with different methods and could still come up ideally with the same or different conclusions. This happened in those 10 years of paper. That was the energizing aspect of those 10 years, were that people who started from each perspective often changed and crisscrossed over 6 months. As new papers, 2 or 3 people did one, 2 others tried to attack them. They got a new data set, they changed the time period, they added different countries, and we got different results. And that by comparing, so comparison is a central theme of social science, is to try to see why these empirical differences are there and to look for some of them. And then I would add a critical additional point. A central piece of good theory is explicitly linking the context to the propositions of the core ideas. So if you say father's occupation explains voting, and where and why, the context is a major part of the driver, or the major part of the whole thing. And so that's what we elaborate most in the book on scenes, and we'll talk about that as we proceed. But the simple point has come out in basically all of these books and related issues, and many others are doing so. In our first reading, you'll get the social science version from me in a sense, and then we have Theaster Gates. He has very different perspectives. Okay, that's done more in the other course I'm teaching this quarter, but that will I'll bring these in as well. The other big hot things, if you will, in the last 10 years in the U.S., maybe 20 years in different ways. Earlier in Europe, it was maybe labeled immigration, but now it's called diversity, with African Americans as leaders, with women in feminist organizations, with gays, lesbians, etc., and human rights as an international political kind of commitment. All of these things have a set of dynamics, including Me Too, in ways that can give us more insight if we use it as a litmus test for the whole political system. So in a litmus test, in a sense, the litmus test metaphor is what, in a sense, we're doing in this course. We're trying to say, how does the color change as we add different chemicals into this jar? These are direct issues which are being transformed along with greater citizen engagement, along with fighting with corporations, with governments, with militaries, about what often others in theory, in philosophy of science, people often talk about assumptions. Okay, what we try to do is but mainly instead of, where we can, where possible, connect the assumptions into what the chemicals are in the litmus test. That is, instead of saying, I imagine, everybody's rich, or everybody's black, or everybody's has an IQ of 163, what happens if we change these different components and then look at them empirically and see what happens if we have different groups of different makeup of those, etc. and that's what Heckman is doing with lots of fancy econometrics, and this is what Freakonomics is about. They directly challenge what are the legitimate ways of doing politics, making decisions more generally, and what kind of method and what ways can we match up our preferences. So preferences is a classic term in economics, but or utility, or maximizing utility used to be almost the definition of economics. I'll simply add then a major work was Anthony Downs' book called The Economic Theory of Democracy, and was written here when he was assistant professor. But that in a sense joined political science with economics, which transformed lots of the political science departments. But if we go further, and then well, similarly, political theory, that term, is in another separate social thought aspect of political science. So we have this is almost the only university in the world called social thought, which has included novelists like Saul Bellow, but also critical person was Edward Shills, S-H-I-L-S. So he had a perspective of joining and integrating the social sciences in a way which I follow in part, not simply Shills, but so did Gary Becker, so did many others, trying to see how these pieces can be joined together. Not to say that we have noise, not to say that we have just so much division in so many different heads that it's nothing individualism, but we want to say we have many theories which in fact do work. They're often right, but the question is, where are they right? Where are they reasonable? And or put differently, how much can we explain with the best theories we have? And one of my propositions is Clark's proposition of limited knowledge or noise. The best theories generally explain about how much? 90%? 50%? What would you say? How about in biology, in medicine, in economics, in sociology, political science? What's the best theories that roughly explain? Yeah?
80%.
80%. Anybody else want to guess a number? If you look at the journals, you look for an adjusted R squared when you see tables, if you have a quantitative, or if you see a qualitative way, you can see the same kind of thing if we have diversity among different ethnographers, for instance. Anybody else want to guess a number?
50%.
Okay, and these are many people would say that. I mean, these are but look at the numbers. It's closer to 15. 15%. All these social scientists, all these people with Nobel Prizes, we're only explaining about 15%. 85% is not being explained by most of our best theories. But it's not just social sciences. I'm saying it's the same in medicine, it's the same in biology, it's the same in most of the world. Life is complicated. Many different things are going, and we often don't still. And most of what our bodies are doing and how they work, we don't know. Okay, but we're learning. And if we make a little bit, we add 1%, that's better than most lifetimes. Okay. The other thing which we stressed in this book, well, let me I'll hold that for a minute and bring that back. A major driver, as I said, is the citizen. Citizen empowerment has pushed a lot further since, let's say, 1968 and 1989, those 2 years. 68 was Paris and Columbia and Berkeley, student revolts. 89 was the Berlin Wall, Tiananmen Square, and the world is different because of those. But that, in turn, if we want to add a few more, there are great versions of this, and called "The World is Flat." There are many more specifics, which are the cell phone. People are carrying these around. Rural Chinese, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, these people fought. They were bowling, they were playing mahjong, they were talking to their friends. It was personal. People saw each other and knew them by name, or they knew their faces, they knew their children, their grandchildren. Today, those little squares are empty. They're talking on cell phones to their children in Beijing or in Los Angeles, even though they're living and they're officially resident and they get their rights from the government in China, because they are not going to Los Angeles or Beijing. They stay there, and their children have to come back to get certain rights. Okay, like certain medical procedures. Social media, major factor I'm going to come back to, but this is interrelated with the idea of globalization. So I just taught a course this winter called Global Local Politics, and those two are usually not put together, global and local. In fact, in my metaphor of the Chinese village is very strongly just that. It is global and local together. But if we look more closely, the Sierra Club, Doctors Without Borders, there are hundreds of these kinds of social media groups, and not just on social media. They're also membership. Some of them have official membership, and you have pay a fee and you get a card. Others are lifestyle, and they're not. Nobody knows if you're coming or leaving from a website discussing some of these in much of the world. In China, some of them are not. You may have to wait 2 years before you can join some popular social media that people are very cautious about. Will you be able to be permitted, or will you say the right things, etc. And then they monitor, and people are excluded, kicked out if they don't do the right things. So there are many ways that these are interpenetrating between social media, membership, voting if there's voting in that country, protesting in the streets, and then saying to your friends individually in person or over a phone or over a social media site. Big data is another big related revolution. We've got tons and tons of data which didn't exist just 10, 20 years ago. This is exploding so much faster. Basically, the number of papers in about everything has doubled more in less than every 10 years ever since Isaac Newton. For hundreds of years, there's been a doubling of the number of papers on everything. Okay, and we add to that social media. Okay, it's more and more complicated and huge amounts of data, and we have so much data that we need theory more systematically to help think and guide and structure these data in ways that make sense. At the same time, qualitative analysts from linguists, linguistics, or the arts and humanities are changing both their methods and their conceptions of how they work. Many artists at the Chicago Art Institute and in the School of the Art Institute, it's a major school in downtown Chicago, engage in diversity today in many of their courses explicitly, just in the title or in their content. There's so much focused. Is it really black power? Is it truly consistent with the proper roles of women? Is it proper lesbian perspective or not? I went to a faculty workshop here with about 20 faculty focused on aesthetics and the rise of different ways of having new perspectives. And a woman who was a professor at the Art Institute said, this was her title, "Bring back beauty." That is not just talk about, are they feminist, are they black, are they lesbian, are they in favor of etc. What makes art? And so she said, I'm a minority, but I think it ought to be said more loudly. Artists should be, first of all, or at least still do something to do with beauty and not just talk about these social issues. So we have an interpenetration driven by the artists themselves and the professors of art, who are often artists themselves, as she was. And she lived in Gary. She's white, but she lived in Gary, and she built a fantastic park that was beautiful. And everybody said, "This is great. Let's do more of that." And they were mostly black in Gary. But my point is, these themes spoke to across racial lines in ways that, and Theaster Gates' African American face, he's bringing beauty to Detroit, to Chicago in other ways that are transforming the politics and lifestyle around them. Okay. He has said in things which are here in some of these books. His staff came up when we published another book and said, can you work with us? And so we started talking, and we found, my God, he's doing many of this, doing and saying explicitly many of the same things. So they then did another official statement of his program, which was grew out of four maps and four master's theses here, in which people are moving in this same direction, whether it's through more academic or into abstract intellectual, or being an artist, or being a journalist, or walking around or looking in the jungle, as Levi Strauss tried to find an isolated village and failed. Okay, so some Italian cities are funding arts groups to help mobilize and articulate the concerns of people who can barely speak or write, but who have a new minority, including immigrants, can have people in parades, in dances, or in puppets. There are efforts similarly, and there's a group in Brussels which has done this to try to mobilize immigrants and immigrant rights in what the rest of Europe, by having building of puppets together and then showing those, or doing things which are media responsive. Another theme, it's a broad aspect of the arts. Media responsive is much more important, I can say, than books. I'm turning it the other way. This, in some way, this is more the future. The books of the past. So they're still they'll still be there longer. But the point is, how these things look and feel become more explicitly sensitive and important. And political leaders, from Bill Clinton playing with his musical instrument, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama dancing in the White House, were trying to make statements. Bill Clinton with his baseball cap and maybe his trials, all these things. These are all interrelated, and with some people, these things are very negative. For others, they're very positive. When Bill Clinton was being tried for having an affair with Monica Lewinsky by the whole U.S. Congress, he's being impeached. They were trying to get more evidence. They had public hearings, television, and so forth. Then others did, how much do you support Bill Clinton? his popularity went up the whole time through those hearings. The opposite of what the classic American conception of middle class morality and propriety was about. The opposite. So what's happening right now with Trump and Biden, and take a look at the others. One which, okay, we'll continue. Let me see, we don't have a clock here. That's 10. I mentioned artists and new political participants, which is no accident. That elected officials are seeking ways to recognize politics as in part entertainment, or at least part of a holistic life experience, sometimes including personal identity. Having the basketball shoes that Michael Jordan puts more baskets into because he has those shoes with his name on it, are part of that kind of sense of identity. Michael Jordan was asked in an interview, how are you so successful as a basketball player? If I believe, I can achieve. Look at Max Weber. This is Calvinism. His application of Calvinism on the basketball court. Okay. In Syria, when they were having parades in different villages, trying to recruit the village by village, you had multiple, in an early stage, this maybe I would say early, say 10 or 15 years ago, you had different groups were trying to recruit supporters politically. And they had parades, they had slogans, they had put up little signs, and the feel, the mood, the resonance of the wording made a difference between, people going against you or for you in dramatic ways. So and this was not just for fun. These are people who are going to kill each other a week later, and did. So these are, and of course, in Israel, in Ukraine, and Russia now, these are the same. These are extreme versions, or that is, these are lifetime life versus death kinds of issues, but the same kinds of issues affect us. And another way that we can do it is, I ride my bike for years. You bike to different neighborhoods, you talk to people in neighborhoods in this city, and you can find many of the same things in the entire world if you look. People are shooting each other, people are writing about why, people are holding funerals, they're having religious services, they're having political speeches. Kanye West and another guy started Christian rap in Chicago, and his collaborator ran as an alderman for the city of Chicago, and he got something like 30-40% of the votes, based on not being sexually explicit about something, but being Christian and using those kinds of lyrics, which were the opposite, which Kanye West was known for doing the opposite. Okay. He then later on was fired from top companies that were paying him big fees because he said some things and published some things about the Nazis were pretty good. Okay. So artists can do and say the wrong things and the right things in ways that destroy his political economic base. Ranging all the way from Christian rap to the Nazis. Okay. One of the big themes of Marty Lipset was that the two-party system, or the majority rule, which links with the two-party system in the U.S. and more or less with the first past the post, as the English refer to it. These two-party orientations tend to simplify and weaken ideological rigidity, whereas the the continental system of proportional representation does not have that, and there are many small parties, which intellectuals can then say you can have true articulated specific views of the environment, green parties, or feminist kinds of issues. After 1989, after the first elections in many of the East European countries, Poland had only one, as in to the a little further east, the Communist Party, and nobody else really. And they had there were about 300 groups linked with parties, including such things as the Safe Sex Party and Beer Drinking Party. They were two separate parties, officially. Maybe you could put them together, whatever, but the point is, these kinds of things, but then the next elections, there was a mixture between Poland and then the Czech Republic. I think it was 4 years later. Which party got the largest proportion of votes from the citizens? It wasn't beer drinking. It's the Communist Party. It's democratically got the plurality of the votes. It had their message was egalitarianism, that you're getting more inequality now with capitalism. Vote us back in, and a plurality of the. Okay, so these issues of labels of the parties, such as communist or socialist or capitalist, whatever, are interrelated with such things as what we can call issue areas, like safe sex. Rather, in the U.S., these kinds of specific issues were less embraced by the parties in detail, and more strongly, and that is because they're compromising. Biden is most explicit. Well, Biden and Trump, both in the past, they've got 1,000 different things which are mixed together that in the past a strong party program writer would never dare put together. Instead, the American versions of what happened in Poland are simply the civic groups, the political, the churches historically, and civic activities, and of course the social media are highly differentiated and get more and more so. These were identified as the fundamental differences in the past between the American democracy, as Tocqueville wrote about it, and the European authoritarianism, as he himself talked about. So Robert Putnam's best-selling book, Bowling Alone, was a warning that America was fragmenting and losing confidence in leaders because the civic groups were in decline. That is, people from the Boy Scouts to the Lions Clubs, or more recently in the churches, including the black churches, were having fewer and fewer members showing up or turning out. We analyzed Putnam's data and found that, and similar data, found that he was generally right for most kinds of groups, but when we separated them out more carefully than he did, we looked at unions, churches of different types, Jehovah's Witnesses, arts groups, and what did we find? The artists have had a huge increase. The American citizens had roughly doubled in about 15 years in their membership or participation in arts activities, even though they were no longer going to Boy Scouts or Lions Clubs or lots of other things which were in decline. So some things are going up and other things are going down. Similarly, when I taught a course, first year as a part of the core for the college students here, required, one of the first year courses, Power it was called, classical course. And I brought this newly published paper called Bowling Alone, and the students, first year students in the college said, "This is crazy. He's leaving out social media." They said that just like that. USC students, they were right. Putnam was wrong. Okay. So we found that and published that here, and so the title is Kentuckville karaoke. That is, how can the arts really make things different and really make us understand? There we go, we get a laugh. We see, he's from a country where people, karaoke is serious, politics is not. Tell us a little more. I mean, can you tell us just which country you're from?
Oh.
Go ahead. No, but
That's quite sad.
no, but your reaction is perfect. You're right. I want to have just explain to the others who don't realize why this title is critical. But why did you laugh? Please go ahead.
It's okay. It's first of all, I laughed not because of very profound reasons. It's just like the juxtaposition between Tuckaville, you know, you would typically regard as a sort of serious figure, and especially having written, you know, such a monumental work, versus karaoke, which is like some of the most, I guess, casual moments you can ever have, and also like a mismatch between the historical periods, because like I think in Tocqueville's time the phonograph was invented yet, or something like. So it's like it's just like just very absurd, or like I guess it's maybe like having Hamilton like hold a microphone or something like that.
No, but the juxtaposition, Hamilton is a very good comparison as well of that is, you can say it's laughable, but think about it, and the point is politics, Hamilton, karaoke are all entertainment for some people, but they are also work. That is, who are the people who went in largest numbers to karaoke in China, in Japan, in Korea? Were these individuals choosing to go alone, or are they going? You're an expert from China. Who said let's go to the karaoke together?
I'm not an expert in karaoke, but like I think people always in packs when they go to karaoke. They go to karaoke with their friends or families or classmates. They won't go to karaoke alone.
How about working companions from a factory?
Yeah,
From an office.
Also colleagues.
Okay, that's the critical point. And if the leader of the group, the union leader or the management leader who says, okay, 25 people, let's go to the bar together, and then we're going to have karaoke. If you're in China, all 25 people go to the bar. They don't choose 25 separate decisions. There's a leader behind a lot of karaoke in Asia. The family is not an individualistic institution in Asia. It's moving more individually, but it still has where in the U.S., what's the family classic America? Okay, so the family is weakening in the West. So is China, but nevertheless, the work groups still, and so a fundamental change in China is much more faster, happening faster and more visibly, but it's also in the West, is production is going down and explaining lots of things, and consumption is going up, and that's what's in the title. Kentuckville karaoke. Can we join the multiple meanings of karaoke with leisure time production and consumption? And if you want to, if you're a banker in a communist country or a Western country and you want to invest with a good return, where do you invest? Consumption or production? Okay. What drove there've been stories that came out in the last GNP. What were some of the biggest drivers of the dramatic rise? AI in the last 6 months, but before that, what did they have 6 months before that? Taylor West, Oppenheimer, Barbie. These are not production. These are consumption lifestyle kinds of issues. On the financial papers, Fortune magazine calculated this percent of the GNP that was increased thanks to these films and performances. let me say, what, if you look at the sections, I'll just briefly mention the syllabus. We have sections in the traditional classic institutions, political parties, civic groups, voting, social media. These are things clearly everybody should know some things about, but what we're going to do is introduce within them where and how these new dynamics are transforming them. And part is linked with globalization, part is linked with the citizen empowerment, with the technology. All these are fitting together, and in a sense, the litmus test what are we going to, we'll put different things in those litmus jars and try to see how they're transformed. And we'll especially look at what and how artists do this, because artists and arts people, like the Art Institute professor, they're thinking about the world more holistically. So if you're writing a novel, you're writing a poem, making a movie, or writing, or even within a novel, you don't just say, here's the man and the woman, etc. You have, it's in the late 19th century with Joyce, with Faulkner, you have free association within the mind in paper. That kind of conception of putting together what's beneath the sheets, beneath, the superego, where and how these things fit together, that's what became more explicitly joined with, say, with Freudian theory, but then with others, sort of say, I was a student of Levi-Strauss, as I mentioned, with the Tristes Tropiques, but he did 4 volumes, four volumes on mythology, and mythology, in his term, included basically culture. So where and how does culture get transformed? And then I had a course with Piaget. So Piaget joined the socialization of children and psychology and how these things then fit together. And so Piaget, Levi-Strauss, later on today, Freakonomics, Gary Becker, I would say these people are all doing the same kind of thing. They're trying to build it, and building in that sense did Freud. Taking everything and putting them together, but still making science out of it. But without leaving out the arts, without leaving the unconscious, without leaving the body. The body is not a discovery just this week, but it's very explicit in a lot of say, of feminist writing. Okay. The one more couple of naming names: Freakonomics, Lollapalooza, Heckman, Dewey. Ralph Ullman and I were students together when we were taking some of these courses. He went on to become Director of Copyrights in the United States. He gave me his card and he said, that's an interesting title, Director. So he was the top U.S. government official supervising, monitoring, and trying to follow the law about copyrights. And then I learned from him, what is the biggest, the U.S. is supposed to be losing money in international relations. We're importing cars, we're importing wine, we're importing clothes, we're importing perfume, all these things, and so we're giving back the money. And of course the big production of low cost in the past used to be Japan, then with Korea, now with China. So that is, people say we're one economy. The Chinese economy, the U.S. are not separate. The Chinese borrows and pays interest on huge amounts of federal loans, but at the same they ship all kinds of products here. What Ralph Ullman studied, what did in these kinds of complex exchanges, what did the U.S. most export dramatically for the last decades that the rest of the world wants most? What's that?
Technology.
No. Many people would have thought that, but try again. Many people would have said technology, say Apple, would have said about whatever, but who else? Yeah.
Brains and, I don't know,
Food. No, in China for sure. China, I think, imports I think the major source of Chinese food is the U.S. Wheat and things like this, right? Pasta, etc. But this, in terms of dollar amounts, whatever yen, no. Try again.
Weapons?
No weapons. Okay. Yeah. Yes. I mean, people think of this.
Well, I think you're hinting at entertainment movies.
There we go. Okay, entertainment. The biggest issue is includes entertainment, but what's the? Let me try to remember what the legal term. Basically, we can call it copyrights. Now here we go. Intellectual property. That's the term. The biggest export from the U.S. is intellectual property. And how, but then in people in China, people in Russia, for decades stole, billions of dollars worth of these bits of Elvis Presley songs, movies, Hollywood, and so forth. And so what Ralph did, my friend, he would get in an airplane with some of the lead dancers from Broadway in New York, Hollywood, beautiful women dressed up fantastically, and they would get off the airplane, they'd go to Moscow, they'd go to Beijing, and they would say, we'd like to have maybe, how about, $270 million to take us back. And they gave it to them, okay? Because they knew there could be other exchanges which could, so the point is, intellectual property is what is here, and he was doing it. Okay. So but the point is, all your guesses are what you read about in the press. Nobody talks about this explicitly. That is, Taylor Swift isn't, or I gave you a few examples. Taylor Swift is not just in Oklahoma City. Taylor Swift is in Singapore. And the Singaporeans want to say, we want to be part of Taylor Swift, and we want to have the intellectual property of Taylor Swift, and nobody else. We don't want the Koreans. We don't want, the Taiwanese. We want us to come to Singapore because they have the reputation of being very serious and critical of women's roles, maybe, or something like this. So they're trying to change the reputation of Singapore. Okay, these are hot issues. Okay, let's discuss a little bit more generally. There's more we can bring in. Or I'll give you one more quote to lead into to think about. One rapper said, "Rap is Black America's CNN." But is this frankly measured? And it can be measured with YouTube scores in ways that this can look at and capture some of the global and the politically important. So that is right after some of this came out. I won't comment about it. Look up if you want. What did Trump say about Taylor Swift? That is, both Biden and Trump are trying to capture and continue the charisma of Taylor Swift, for instance. By contrast, how about Lady Gaga? Can she perform in Russia? Absolutely not. Russians refuse to let her perform, etc. So where and why these things get measured and captured and politically connected to or fought against have become a serious part of politics. This is political sociology. Okay. Questions and discussion? Yes.
This is really logistical. So I saw on campus that we were starting at 4:10. That the canonical time was like 4:30.
Yeah, I think that was a carryover from a mistake during the COVID era when classes were not starting at 4:30; they were starting at 4. And so if I let that still, or maybe you read an earlier version of that, but I mean the syllabus which I posted, I think I've forgotten how many days ago, but it was relatively recently. Um, so if it says 4, it's wrong. It should be 4:30. There's another class in here. That is what they call canonical hours. Were changed under COVID, and now they've changed back.
Right, okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Other issues, questions. Woman with a black sweater. You have a very serious expression on your face. What are we doing to make you smile a little bit at karaoke?
I don't know, I think it's interesting because I took your class last quarter, the global local politics, and I feel like looking at the karaoke in like a different view, more of like a sociology, is interesting. I never really thought of like the U.S. more of like an export of entertainment, and I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift. So I think the Singapore part was
You're a big fan of what?
Taylor Swift.
Taylor
I think
Swift,
the
okay.
Singapore aspect that you were talking about is interesting. How they sort of like banned other countries in Asia from allowing her to perform. It was a very good like political play on their part, and I thought that was interesting. You brought it up.
Okay. But I thought you were grimacing almost. So you're smiling with Taylor Swift. All right. There you go.
That was not a grimace.
No, I was wondering. Okay. Other reactions, either smiles or aha, E equals MC squared. Anybody have a more scientific reaction to what I said? Yes.
Apologies to disappoint. This is like also another logistical question. Are we actually expected to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 texts for this first?
There are 3 books which we suggest purchasing or having copies of handy, but that's pretty small. That is, the main readings are on Canvas, and if you look closely, I don't say read the book. I try to give you often 3 pages, 5 pages, more than many. That is, it may have several pages. I mean, the syllabus is maybe more than 10 pages, but most of it is what I have written. Most of what you're being asked to read is relatively short. Look more closely.
Right. Okay. I just only saw the Canvas post for some reason today, so I was not really. I did not have a chance.
Sure. No, I regularly ask students in other classes, and they've often said it's about the same or maybe less than other classes and so.
That is very reassuring.
Yeah. Other questions, big or small? Comments? Yes.
In terms of the entertainment as politics and elections as entertainment, can we connect these ideas to democracy? And can we connect this to global culture? Is global and to connect it with some syllabus questions, what place global culture is going to occupy in this course, and maybe how you would describe it.
Yeah. The simple question we really I'll give you the analytical answer. If we have social and economic and other kinds of factors here, and we have here politics, we can then have here in this middle entertainment and consumption. So if we have this is A, B, C, D. If these are the models of social science that we're going to go over in the course in the sections, parties, civic groups, and so forth, globalization interacts with these. So this is now, I'll call it Z1, or no, G1, G2, G3. So in the course, just on that, we don't say we have only, well, when she was here, I taught some courses with Saskia Sassen. Saskia Sassen is globalization drives everything. Whereas basically what we do in each of these syllabi is we do the opposite. We start from bottom up. We start from the institutions that are there before globalization, or I won't say just before, but because globalization is always there. But we look at the other institutions that are not so much linked with globalization, but we then connect the two and see where and how each of these types of paths rise or fall. And so I would not say, as some have said, for instance, that globalization is democracy. Globalization, and I've include, I mean, a central part of the globalization course I now use is Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan created the largest land area empire in the world, including not only the Mongolia, which he and his friends by horseback came, and they burned down all of Beijing, took over China. They went to the largest city called Kiev, which they're fighting over now. They burned all of Kiev, and they occupied Russia, what's now Russia roughly in the Soviet Union, 250 years. So when Putin is talking about history, this is big stuff for the Russians in a way that Americans don't have any history compared to the Russians or the Chinese. That history is bigger than in the U.S. So we talk instead about the thing we say, what Lip said in his book, American Exceptionalism. The key thing that makes you an American is being able to memorize something about the democracy, the Constitution, a little bit of history that make you something you can talk about those values. But it is not blood and soil, which is the core, if you will, of the Asian tradition. So Russia has got both in different institutions, or things like karaoke. But Western Europe is a mix, in a sense, that you've got both the German blood and soil, but you've got values as well of egalitarianism. The French Revolution of 1789, Napoleon then took and was hugely successful. When Napoleon, invaded Germany, Hegel, Beethoven, they celebrated Napoleon. Intellectuals, Hegel, this abstract theorist, they dedicated things to Napoleon at the beginning because he abolished so-called feudalism, and so he got into chunks over to Moscow, but he really didn't dig that far. So for the Russians, the big things in their history recently, holding back Hitler and holding back Napoleon, military efforts to impose Western individualism on Russia. So this is okay. So my quick answer is these are all interrelated kinds of things, and it's not as if it's just ideas versus physical or something of that sort. But each of these points which you mentioned are things that we will explore in the course. And one thing we will try to do, and what I've given you here as an example, is we can call boxes and arrows. Even though I put ABC, I put almost no equations in the course. I'll talk about it a little. If we were in economics, I might do it more. That is in the past. Jim Heckman is now writing books without equations. Okay. But the reason for this is any artist, any student here, any journalist can draw these kinds of pictures and understand them like this. But what they're telling you is there's not one single cause. What this is saying here is multi-causality, multi-dimensionality, and where and how these each work in some way, in probabilistic way. And if we talk about probability and shared variance, we're talking 15%. These things explain 15%. 85% is not working. You know, it's still, I put over here. Noise is still over here. Noise, chance, luck, other things. Yes.
Can we join this entertainment machine with Neil Postman amusing ourselves to death, where the method with Neil Postman amusing ourselves to death, where he talked about the method being the problem?
Well, I would. I'm not sure of the specific reference, but I wouldn't say. But in terms of methods, I would say my view is eclectic. We need all methods. There is no. I would not propose any one method that we would always use. I would say we can use journalism. We can use personal ethnography. We can use history, historical archives. We can use survey research. We can use census data. All of these can give us something, but nothing. But everything has its. And then we can introduce a term, measurement error. That is, what are the biases of every kind of methodology? Has some strengths, some elements of useful information, but they also have its limitations. And so if we can articulate the limitations of each of those, and then the quick answer in these multiple books is try many methods, and so these books have people writing in different chapters different methods to try to see if they tell a story, such as especially this idea about the rise. The big question here is, how do the traditional models of the economy and the politics become transformed by adding the arts? Yeah.
What did Seymour's theory have to say about parents who worked in civil service jobs like education or first responders? Who did their kids vote for and why?
Yeah, let me give you not a direct answer, but one question. When Proposition 13 passed in California in 1978, the governor, all the civic leaders, all the press said, "Don't vote for this. This will close our schools. This will destroy our university. We won't be able to repair the freeways," and so forth. And 66% of the citizens said, "Vote for Prop 13." Okay, so the media went and said, and they interviewed people, what did you vote for Prop 13? Yes. But you work for I think, did you say, where do you work? I work for the state of California. You're voting for the source of your salary, which is paying for the taxes of the state. He said, my home is more important than my job. Okay, so if we look at many, say, I would say, hypothetical, say many American children who are students of mothers of Dewey and parents of Dewey, who are the progressive schools, which this University of Chicago laboratory school, where Dewey founded basically, this lab school, taught the children to be independent and ignore your parents. Do what you want. And that's happening, that's spreading in different ways around the world. That is, it's not just the family, it's the rise of all kinds of things. That is, a term, I'm advising people on BAs and MAs writing on fandom surrounding Taylor Swift, fanning around on Lady Gaga, fanning around, Trump. We're at the end of the hour. We will continue. Take a look at what's on the syllabus. If you have any questions, why don't you stand up? Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't want to leave out our number 2, our participant.
Okay.
But please stand up for a minute. Just say a word about yourself.
Okay.
Turn yourself on the camera so you can see.
Oh boy. It's not. I'm not sure. It's okay. So hello everyone. My name is.
Back up just a little, and it won't cut your head off otherwise. Okay.
Hello everyone. My name is Ruanzhenghao Shi, and you can call me Shi Ruan. I'm a 5th year PhD student at Department of Sociology, and my research field is social movements and political sociology. So I will be your TA this quarter, so it's my great pleasure to doing so. And it will be my last teaching assistantship for my entire PhD career. So I hope I can help you guys to walk through the entire experience. So thank you guys.
Okay.
That's not necessary, so.
Very good.